How's it going, everyone? This is the George here, and today we are going to be talking about A Quiet Place Day One. I saw the movie yesterday. This is a prequel to the first two Quiet Place movies. This is directed by Michael Sarnowski and stars Lupita Nyong'o, Joseph Quinn, and Jaimin Hansu. Sorry if I mispronounced that first name. And he's the only actor that's reprising his role from the previous movie A Quiet Place Part Two. And in here we see the first days of the invasion of the creatures from A Quiet Place movie. Only this time it's in a different setting. We're seeing them in New York City. If you recall in the first two Quiet Place movies, if you've seen those movies, the settings are usually in more spread out rural farm areas and small towns. And now we're seeing the invasion happen in New York City, which is a larger area, big city, a lot of noise, and we're seeing what's happening. We're also introduced to some new characters. A character named Sam, played by Lupita Nyong'o. She is dealing with cancer. She's in hospice care, and she's going on a trip, on a group outing into the city with others, and her service cat Frodo. Yeah, Sam and Frodo, Lord of the Rings reference right there. I don't know if that was intentional or not. Learn to survive, and they meet another person named Eric, played by Joseph Quinn, who helps her get to where she wants to go. It's this pizza place in Harlem that's very dear to her, and at first you're wondering why she want to go to this pizza place so bad. And some people might say she comes across as a bit selfish, but it's like she can die any minute now with her poor health. Of course, like in your dying moments, I can't blame her for wanting to do something that holds dear to her, and you learn why it holds dear to her. But anyways, back to the movie. When this movie was announced, I was very curious to see like what the first day or first days were like. We got a glimpse of it in A Quiet Place Part Two in the opening scene, where we saw the Abbott family, John Krasinski and Emily Blunt's characters and their children, how they dealt with it in their town, what had happened, what they were doing when the events happened. And now we're seeing it in another area. That's something that I always wish was explored in other post apocalyptic kind of things. We don't really always get to see that in other stuff. For example, as much as I love the Planet of the Apes movies, when the simian flu broke out, I was always curious, like, oh, what was like this city like when it happened, when it hit this area, or what was this country like when it hit that area? Same thing with The Last of Us. But we've seen like what was happening where Joel was living in Texas. We saw that happening, but I was always curious, like, what was the outbreak like in, let's say, maybe California when it first happened, or Philadelphia when it first happened, or maybe even another country like Italy when it first happened. Like, you're always curious, like, what is happening in other areas. And I love that it's also in a different kind of setting compared to the first two Quiet Place movies. As I mentioned, it's in New York City, a larger area, a louder area, a lot more people to happen. We see a lot more creatures, and the creatures still look fantastic as always. And also, a new environment leads to new ways of suspense, whether it be in larger buildings or the subway tunnels, out in the open streets. So I find that very interesting. I'm glad that they went with a different setting and also with different characters, because you're always wondering, like, what is this character reacting to? Or, like, well, how are other people dealing with this? The only character from a previous movie, as I mentioned before, that's in here is Jijimon Hansu's character from the previous movie. And this is basically also somewhat of an origin as to how his family and other characters got to that settling that they were in A Quiet Place Part Two, basically. But yeah, I felt bad for Lupita Nyong'o's character and like the health issues that she was going with and trying to survive. Joseph Quinn's character Eric, I will say he's likable, but his introduction felt a bit rushed and forced. You don't really know much about him other than his family isn't even in the country at the moment, so I kind of wish there might have been a bit more of an emotional story for him, because it's like, yeah, this invasion's happening. What's happening overseas with this, or other parts of the country and world? Like, what's going on here? So it kind of felt like there was potential for a more emotional backstory with him, but just wasn't quite there. But I love the dynamic between Eric and Sam in this movie. And Frodo the cat is so adorable, and to me is the MVP of this movie. Um, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not familiar with service cats. I have three cats myself. But yeah, that cat was very calm in this movie, which I guess that's how service cats are. I'm not, like I said, I'm not familiar with service cats. I will say, if it was any of my cats, as much as I love them, they would not have handled the situation just as well. But it's just very interesting to see, like, how what the military's first reaction was, like people learning about their weaknesses and stuff of the monsters, like the water, they can't go in water and all that. But I will say, I also feel like while this was a good movie with a good plot, a good start to the invasion, kind of felt like they played it safe at the same time. It felt like this movie didn't really break any new ground or do anything different than the other movies. And look, it's easy for us for a prequel to have good characters, but not as good as the original characters, which was basically the thing with this movie. I like the new characters, but I didn't connect with them like I did with the other family in the first two movies. But that's not the main issue of the movie because the characters are still likable enough. I still like them. The issue for me is that when you are is that in a new setting with these familiar creatures, I felt like there was an opportunity to do something new with them, to explore more about them. Maybe some characters can throw out theories as to where they came from, how many there are, like other stuff. Maybe learn something that about them that the Abbott family or other characters from the previous movies, like Killian Murphy's character, doesn't know about with these creatures. Just something different other than a new setting and new characters. Because the thing is, when it comes to prequels, whether the prequel is good or bad, it feels like most of the time prequels find a way to add something new that we didn't know about from the original movies. Like take Harry Potter and the Fantastic Beast movies. Whether you love or hate the Fantastic Beast movies introduced certain concepts and things that we weren't introduced to in the original Harry Potter movies or even books. Another example is the Star Wars prequels. Whether you love or hate the Star Wars prequels, it introduced concepts and things that we didn't see in the original trilogy. And I'm not saying that A Quiet Place Day One has to go all out with it, but at least maybe add something different to it. Because you have good characters, you have a good plot, you have good horror and suspense, you have a good new setting. You can try like a few different kind of stuff. It just feels like this movie, while it was good, had the potential to be better or at least do some different kind of stuff, and it just didn't do it. But again, I like the concept of it. I like the plot. I like how it looks in a bigger setting. Seeing the first reactions from several people, the horror, the post-apocalyptic feel is captured very well. I do hope that the next Quiet Place movie is A Quiet Place Part 3, or if we still go in this prequel direction, or seeing another part of the world or country dealing with this with this invasion and these creatures, that something new is added to it. But overall, I like The Quiet Place Day One. I do think it's the weakest of the Quiet Place movies, but it's still another very good movie in the Quiet Place franchise. I'm going to give A Quiet Place Day One a B plus. If you are a fan of the Quiet Place movies, I highly recommend you check this one out. So, what are your thoughts on A Quiet Place Day One? Did you love it? Did you hate it? And what's your favorite Quiet Place movie? Let me know in the comments down below. And even though it's a few years old, I did review A Quiet Place Part 2 a few years ago when it first came out in theaters. And I actually had a very unique experience with that movie. I was the only one in the theater watching it. But then again, that was around the time that people still weren't going to the theaters. So it was an interesting experience. And maybe this October for Halloween, maybe I will review the first Quiet Place movie and share my thoughts on that. But yeah, I'm going to put the link down below for my review of A Quiet Place Part 2 if you want to hear my thoughts on that movie. But anyways, I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe already if you haven't. Please share this with someone that likes the Quiet Place movies. And I hope to see you guys real soon. Take care, everyone.